What up, pilots? So I've been testing a bunch of Vulture, and I've come to a couple conclusions that the deck right now just doesn't have every unit that it needs. But with that being said, I feel like I've pushed it towards a pretty good spot. I don't know about it being a meta buster or anything. In fact, this deck profile is more or less a reminder to myself once we get more and better units for the archetype as a reference point to come back to, look at what I was doing, see where we can make improvements, and go from there. Also, this is more or less, a community effort as well. So we can get feedback, look at some possibilities, and maybe go in a different direction. But this is the closest that I could get it with being Vulture oriented and not Barbados or generic purple good stuff focused. So the game plan is to get off the ground running. It's not an aggro deck. It's definitely a mid-range combo finisher, but we need forward aggression in the beginning of the game to get in chip damage to set up for lethal. So keep that in mind while I'm going over some of the cards that will be featured in the deck. With that being said, let's get into it and some reasoning behind the stuff that I chose and why I'm picking these cards. Starting off with our level 2 1 cost units. Like I said, we wanted some forward aggression in the beginning of the game. So with that being said, we went with 4 of the grays. Right, and then to round that out, we also went with more grazes, but just in a different color. Once again, the thought process behind this is just to have early units that can do chip damage to bases and shields, so we can get our opponent within lethal and finish the game, hopefully, on turn 7. We don't really want to extend the game because decks that have a higher ceiling than us completely destroy the deck, and decks with low to the ground feel rush will absolutely just overrun us. So we have to keep tempo with the rest of the meta and also put on some early forward aggression. If not, we fall behind the 8 ball really fast, and that's not good. So with that being said, this is our early package. All these things are subject to change. This is just what I've come up with, what has been working in testing. It's pretty close with some of the meta contenders. We play a bunch of meta and off-meta stuff at my testing grounds, but this has been working out, but this isn't set in stone. So, next we're going to go with our level 3s and our 2 costs. If it hasn't already been seen by now or heard, we do want to go second. It puts us on a really nice curve to get up where we need to be in order to try to snatch the game. With that being said, we got to go with one of the best white blockers in the game right now, in Ilfrith. They might end up going to Rick Diaz's right now. They just feel good as Ilfriths because a lot of 3/3s are running around, and this will survive that onslaught and allow us to crack back and stave off of early aggressive damage. And then we're also going with 4 of the fighter mode. It looks like a generic 3/3 right now, but the fact that it can link with any Vulture trait pilot, and when Big X is on the field, it turns into a 5/3, which is amazing. It just cracks bases on its own for such a cheap cost, and we want to be slamming this kind of in the middle and towards the end of our goal. So it is a necessary 4 of. I can see me jumping Ilfrit to 4 at some point, but for right now, this is a nice ratio to go with. And people don't respect this until Big X drops on the board, and then you wish that you had gotten rid of it. So that's what we're going for at the level 3 slot. For our level 4s, we have to go with what I consider the best unit in Vultures right now, besides Big X, and that is our normal Airmaster. Not only is it pretty decent at its cost, right? But it's a 4/3, so anything at this level that has to block into it probably is going to die when it's not paired with a pilot. And once again, you're going to hear this running theme of when Big X is on the field, because Big X just demands respect when he hits the board, not only having natural suppression, but boosting all of our important Vulture units up to 2, making this a 6/3 is kind of crazy. So we had to go with the 4 package. I wanted to cut it to 3, but every time I did, it just felt horrible. So yeah, we have to go with 4. Speaking of a mandatory 4, we got to go with 4 of the Baby X. Not only does this help you recycle cards that you may have milled off the top of your deck or discarded through other means, but it is also pretty fat, pretty big, and once again, when Big X hits the field and gets paired up, this thing turns into a 5/4, which is once again the best number to crack bases and go faces. An ideal turn also is to be able to play these 2 units at the same time on turn 6, and then on turn 7 you can drop Big X, and then both of these get boosted, and then you can attempt to go from game for there, because these can crack the base, and then Big X can swing and give you your suppression, hitting 2, and then hopefully your last one can clean up the game. But nonetheless, you want both of these units specifically maxed out at 4 apiece. And then moving on to our 5 cost units, we have to go with what I consider one of the best purple units in the game right now, in the Rebake, or as I like to call it, Rabake. I know that's not the name. I like it. Shut up. Let me be a weeb. But this card is just amazing. I almost want to max this out at 4 copies, because being a blocker with this fat of a booty and being able to ping something, and it doesn't matter the orientation of the card that you ping. It can be rested, it can be upside down, it can be confused for all I care, but it's going to do that 1 damage, and sometimes that 1 damage on a unit completely changes the turn, makes your opponent think about, okay, if it does survive, it's probably not going to survive for very much longer type of thing. And it being a blocker in purple is amazing. That's another reason why I like to pair this color with white, because not only does purple naturally have blockers, but we can also take from white and add more blockers. So this card is just amazing. And we do our 2 of Leopard. Now, the other Leopard will be better in the future when other colors get more cards that affect our units in the way that the other Leopard would not be affected by. However, right now, this is just a better Leopard to play. It having the control tool of being able to rest a 4 or lower is pretty damn good right now, especially when there's a lot of white running around and a lot of people's deck lists. So just being able to rest a unit, most likely a blocker, so you can go for game or get over with suppression and, you know, do the damage, is invaluable. However, because there aren't more milling options in the deck besides the base, really, this card isn't that good. If you run it at 4, you'll very seldomly activate it, but running it at 2 gives you a very nice tech option, and at the very least, you can slam it on the board to get it pumped by X later on. But for right now, it's a great unit. We just can't mill as fast as we'd like to take advantage of this card all the time, but it is still a very good card. So for that matter, it's at 2. If anything, later on in the future, we'll go up to 4 on the Rebake and maybe 3 on the Leopard, or maybe we might even just attempt running the other Leopard at that point as well. But for right now, this is what I've been finding success with. And then last but not least, we got our boy Big X. This is the reason for the deck, and I also suspect that at some point We might even not start caring about the plus 2 AP, because this card being as big as it is and having natural suppression, it doesn't need to have damage on it. It doesn't need to have a pilot with it. It just comes out and it immediately says, I will start taking off too much of your life. So if you already didn't have a lot of life when this dropped onto the board, then you probably died. And that's why earlier I made the example of, if we can hit a stride where we see these two on board right before we slam the X, this is a formidable board to have to look at. And because it says other Vulture units, if you have two on the board, I believe they pump each other up, but not separately. You know what I mean? But that's something else that I have to look into. But for now, it just pumping up generically good cards like these, and of course our early Vulture unit being cheap, is very doable to set something like this up before slamming the X, because on turn 6 we have so much mana to play with. This is 5, this is 6. We could even pair another pilot or something, but or we could play one of our little units, right? There's a world where you can play your turn like this, right? And this is ideal, right? You got 2 units boosted that can pop bases, and you got 1 guy who can run in the shields. So if you can go obliterate base and then suppression, hit 2, and then clean the game up like this, this is a very doable game-winning state. So this is base, right? This would be base. And then this is 2, 3, 4. That's 4 life uncontested if there isn't a blocker. That's powerful in a game where you only get 6 life and an EX base. So this is another reason why I had picked smaller units to be in the deck, because at any point, if you can get here, it could also just mean the end of the game. You could take half the game not attacking and just defending to make sure that you get here, and then you have some type of game state that looks like this. The game might be over. So that's just my thought process between for the win condition of the deck. Great card overall, and I actually prefer this art over the alternate art. The alternate art looks sick, don't get me wrong, but this art is pretty damn sexy. Look, scoot it up for you. Yeah, that's damn sexy Gundam right there. So that's it for the units. For the rest of the deck, we're going to do our bases first. So, of course, we needed the mill base. This is so handy because once it gets popped, it's not just 2 cards. It's 3. So if you've been playing the beginning of the game pretty well, this is 3 cards in the trash already. So you only need 4 more to turn on your Big X and your Leopard, which is mathematically awesome. You don't really need 4. You just need to see this card technically 1 time, and your graveyard should be online. And then for the spice, we're running the white base that can't take any damage. With Breach being a thing and becoming more of a thing right now, this card is pretty damn good. I wouldn't pass it up. Plus, I have the sick alt art, so we had to run it. Shout out to Kage. But yeah, this is what we're running for our bases. Pretty generic. The math on Frieden, it checks out. It checks out for sure. So you only need to see about 1 of that base. But moving on, best white card, and gives us some graveyard fodder fuel, and it allows us to filter out unneeded cards, go through the deck a little bit faster, fill up our graveyard, and just see our combo pieces, because we need to see a lot of our deck, and that is also going to prompt me to make some later changes as well. But we need to draw, we need to see a lot of our deck, and we need to see it now. So we have to max this card out. I wish it really had burst draw 1, but that would just make this card $50 common type of shit. So we go with 4 of the affection. another very good white card in Striker Pack. Come on, camera. Thank you. Very good card in Striker Pack. Card's been good since it was introduced, period. It being a burst, giving you a 3/3 blocker, or you being able to produce a 4/2 or 2/4 on demand, depending on what your situation is. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts about this. If you're running white, you got to run Striker Pack. It's just generically too good. Speaking of generically good cards for the color, Fatal Strike. Fatal Strike, self-explanatory, gets rid of chump blockers, gets rid of chump early aggression. Xeon hates to see this card coming because a lot of their lower Xeon units, like Zaku 2s and stuff, are 3 cost or lower. So even if you're paired, I don't care. It doesn't raise your level. You're still susceptible to getting popped. So maybe you get off a pair, one high maneuver, crack EX base, or go into a life. That's the only one you're getting. Fatal Strike, get it out of here. And then because we're seeing a lot of white as well, included here, you see it, Rick Dom, Ilfrith, all the very good early blockers that are in the game right now. Fatal Strike just tells them to go away, and we don't want them to be there, right? We don't want the chump blockers to be there because we want to get off our suppression. So holding on to this, playing it on turn 6 when you know you're about to slam Big X on next turn or anything like that, just sets you up for victory. And then last, Awakened Power. We only run one Awakened Power because, once again, since we're not a mill-centric deck yet, this card is only at 1. When you see it, it's amazing. When you don't feel that bad about it. It could go to another slot, but for right now, when you see it, like I said, it can help set up. You can play it on turn 5 or turn 6 to give yourself an extra Vulture unit to be ready to go for Big X, so you can get your pump numbers up. And because you can bring back any unit under 5 and not just a purple unit, this allows you to also bring back stuff like blockers. So let's say you just need a blocker and you don't have one in your hand, but there's one in your trash, obviously. Awakened Power. And that's, I think that's super powerful, but just not warranted to run at more than 1, because if you start seeing this card before turn 6 in multiples, you just have dead cards in your hand. There's no way around it. They're just dead. But if you see it later on in your game, it curves out very nice with the rest of your game plan. So with that, we only run 1. And then to finish off the deck, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but we only run 4 pilots. Only 4. You would say, yo, you got to squeeze another person in there. Why not Kira and all that other stuff? We're going to go over that. But this card is literally only here for search purposes, to get out your other Vulture units, because we run plenty of Vulture for this to hit. Yes, just like any other deck that has a mixture of cards, you can always whiff. However, the ratio in the deck allows us to hit this pretty consistently when we can use it. And then, of course, it going with Baby X and Big X, and also our little Vulture units that pair with generic Vulture pilots. Card is just good overall. I love it. I just really wish we had another purple Vulture pilot that wasn't a command and that did something more. So that's the deck profile. Let's go over some honorable mentions and cards that were heavily considered but did not make the cut, or might see themselves put into the deck at a later time. First up, the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, we're already running blockers. We do need another pilot. Kira is a heavy consideration because we want to play control until we can kill. So this is a heavy consideration moving forward. I might try and fit it in, or we might try and find a replacement, but this is just a overall obvious pick. My only issue is that if we run this, then we have to cut Rebake. Guisan has to go. And this might not even get run in a full 4 package, in my opinion. If we do it, we're straight up just replacing the Rebake, and it'll go 3 L Strike and then 3 Kira. Maybe 4 Kira, just so we can make sure we have 4 pilots. because a lot of our stuff could just benefit from the -2 AP from Kira. It's just a really good generically good pilot, go Burr, and then +2/+1. So this is definitely an honorable mention. We'll see what it looks like in the future, but for now, I'm really liking the rebake, and I don't want to cut it, but we might have to stop being stubborn, cut it for the L Strike package. Even if it's small, it's there, and it'll help with control tools, with bouncing people's stuff, and then being a pretty sizable blocker as well. Let's talk about the other elephant in the room, which was also discussed. The Mikazuki package. Now, Mikazuki, along with Rebake, and this also having suppression on the big boy, gives you double suppression finisher. If this guy can get in a swing before Big X does, then I think the game is over, and that's something to calculate and think about. Not only that, but Baby Barbados can also net you a draw card, which is completely fine, and we can switch it up from there. We don't even have to use this as a ping. We can use also another one of our honorable mentions in the form of Ryosei Go. It is also a filter card. So it will draw you a card and ping something and allow you to filter out cards from your hand. Because once again, we want to see a lot of our cards on curve, on time. If not, once again, we're behind the 8 ball. So I don't like being under pressure like that. I like taking control of the game, which at the very least I might end up running Blurple, because that is definitely my play style, and I'm forcing this deck currently to go the way that I want it to. But that's once again because we don't have all of the stuff that we want in the Vulture package. So for now, these are heavy considerations to boost the power level of the deck. All right. And then let's go over our last couple of cards. Chaos, why aren't you running this card? This card is really good. But it falls under the same category as Awakened Power. If we see too much of this early, it's just a dead card. Yes, we can math out how to get to 6 or 7 units in trash very fast. However, once you do that, you turn off potential for X or Leopard. And if you're that far behind to have to use this, you probably lost already anyway. That's why we're running Fatal Strike over this card, because Fatal Strike has almost no drawback to being played, but this does. Not only do you need a good excuse to use this, because if you're just using this on nobody type units, then you're dumb and you're way behind, and you will probably never see the rest of your effects turn on the rest of the game after you use this, because banishing 6 cards when you need 7 cards, period, for other effects, it just doesn't cut the mustard right now. Because once again, when we get more mill, if this turns into Light Sworn or Beelzemon, then we'll probably run this card at 2, maybe even 3, because we'll be milling so much that we don't want to mill these. So you'll have to run them in higher numbers so you can see them as well as use them. But yeah, that's why that's not in here. Here's the other Leopard we were talking about. I think this card is great, just not right now. That's going to be a running theme of a lot of the cards that we're talking about. Speaking of which, we only run 4 pilots. So this card is dead. We can barely see our pilot. We see our pilot when we need to see our pilot. Most other decks just want to jam pilots and jam units. This will see its pilot by the time you need to play Big X. And that's all we need. So with that reason, this card is dead in the deck right now. When we can mill more, this card will go not only 1, but probably be at 2. Because we'll be milling our pilots and we'll need them back desperately. Also, if we run the Kira package, this only gets back 1 pilot. You would really want to run this in something that's focused more purple, that has double purple pilots. Or if you're running the command pilots, which we'll get to in a second. Janus Custom. Very good card. when Big X is on the field. Other than that, this card is not scaring anyone. Dealing 1 damage is so bad. It's so bad. But if you got Big X, this turns into a 3-2. This will make you look at it. But by the time we play Big X, we want to be winning the game. We don't want to give our opponent one more turn. And this is played like after you play Big X. It just doesn't go on the flow. This card is kind of good because you can pair it with Baby X and a couple other cards and give it high maneuver. Who doesn't like high maneuver? But it's just not that good right now when our finisher wants to be Big X. Now, if this could go on Big X and we could give Big X high maneuver and suppression, then I would quit this game because that sounds horrible. But yeah, you have to put it on level 5 or lower, and it has to be damaged. So just too stringent to use right now. I'm pretty sure in the future, just like a lot of this stuff, this is what this video is for, is to future proof and show concepts. And then last but not least, our 2 command pilots, which this one isn't that bad. And they knew what they were doing by giving it 0-1, because if they had put in 1-0 and this was able to pump up Vulture units, then this card would be dangerous. But it enhances our defense, which is not bad in a world where a lot of decks want to ping you and do passive damage. Having that 1 extra defense is very good. But we have to keep a Vulture unit on the board. And as you saw, sometimes we'll have blockers. Sometimes we'll have little guys that aren't in the Vulture unit family. This card would be dead versus using other stuff. So we just can't use them. And this is a very serviceable card. But once again, it only being able to target level 4 or lower very severely limits this card. Now, if this card said any one of your Vulture units can attack any standing unit, then this would be the ultimate control tool, and we would run this at 4, really and truthfully, because it'd be another pilot in the deck, and on top of that, it would allow us to attack any standing unit. Oh my god, the possibilities. But the standing unit has to be 4 or lower, and we already have stuff like Leopard to deal with that. So Leopard and Fatal Strike. So this card is almost pretty much useless outside of just being a Vulture pilot. And they threw these at us to give us Vulture pilots to pair with generic Vulture units, units with the trait, but they just don't cut the mustard. And that's why I had to go with very generically good white and purple commands, because these just, as much as they want to be used, they just aren't serviceable. With that being said, this video is long enough. I think we're definitely pushing 30 minutes. But nonetheless, thank you for sitting through, letting me kind of spill my brain about the thoughts on the deck and how I think it should run, or cards that I think should be included. I appreciate it. And future me, hope you do better with this deck than you have been doing. But it is a fun deck, and I do recommend you trying out the list. And please feel free to comment below some changes or some builds that you've been personally using, if you've been using Vulture. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.